Welcome to the Content Survival Guide podcast, where we'll be sharing our personal stories from streaming, various perspectives, and a deep dive into what we've come across during our journeys of creating content.
I'm Gemini.
And I'm Scruffy. All right, so we'll call this episode 1, and we're calling it How to Stream. We can also call it How to Make Content, but this episode is going to lay out a little further a format to how we plan on talking about a lot of our process and understanding how to stream from our point of view, how we've created content. This is going to be, again, kind of an extension of episode 0, reflecting a little bit back on how we've streamed and even how that starts to change. We'll talk about different objectives for the podcast, but I guess let's get into this. How to stream and how to make content. Gemini, I would say, how does one stream? How does one make content? And can anybody do it?
How does one make content? So I love this question. Obviously, we both stream, and I'm sure we get asked this quite a bit in your live streams as I do mine. And it is a very loaded question. At the end of the day, I always kind of answer like this. Every single person has the ability to stream. And what I mean by that is anyone can go out. You can get a list of, hey, you need to buy a PC, you need to buy monitors, you need to get the equipment, you need a microphone. You can have this list of what you can go out and purchase and have the ability to turn on a stream and go live. Now, to follow up that, everyone has the ability to purchase or whatever to get things set up to be able to stream. But what a lot of people, the misconception is not everyone has what it takes as far as work ethic and motivation and personal purpose to put on an entertaining stream or to make entertaining content to gain the growth that people have the misconception of instantly getting when starting a channel or starting a stream.
Yeah, so that grind that people might not think about, they might just think about, all right, so you jump on some video games, you hit live, and boom, you have an audience, or you're going to be guaranteed an audience, or there's these expectations or misconceptions, I should say, of, all right, if I do this, it equals this, more so than I do this, I learn what works, I keep at it. It may be an uphill battle, but I continue, I am consistent, and then I find out X, Y, Z. So now with our podcast, in future episodes, we're going to be breaking it down to exactly what would you need to stream, streaming schedules, why you would stream. There's a lot of who, what, where, when, why that we'll be breaking down. But I think a lot of this needs to be looked at in the scope of evolving content, evolving work ethic. After you work on something, you start to get better at it. Even if you start to change it, you might find different avenues of producing content. So it's not just relevant to streaming, it's also relevant to making content as a whole. So both of us, we stream on Twitch, we've streamed other places, and we're also producing YouTube content. So now it's that whole idea of working towards these larger goals that we might not understand, but we know that we're reaching for something, and it's an ever-evolving learning process.
Oh,
That
a
kind of
lot of
makes sense.
trial and error. Yeah, trial and error is going to be like the number one thing. And when I kind of talked about this too, so we get asked this all the time, how to stream. There's not an answer to this. That's kind of the other thing. And a big purpose of having this podcast set up the way that we do is there's no golden list. We're not going to give you 10 steps. You do each one of these steps to a T, and you'll see you'll see progress.
Instant
You'll
growth.
see this growth.
100,000 followers.
I'm making it because I follow these 10 steps. I want to be very open, and clear that that's not. So with streaming, it is a lot of trial and error. With content creation, a ton of trial and error because it's different to every individual person. Now, what I will tell you, something that I hope every single person gets out of these podcasts is kind of the don'ts. There's not a golden rule to success, but in my opinion, there is definitely a golden rule of things to avoid. Save you time, save you stress, save you disappointment if you're trying to invest in things that at the end of the day don't make a huge impact on content creation, or misconceptions through the industry. You have companies kind of rolling out this stuff of ideas all the time, and coming in as like a new streamer, you get kind of excited and you see all these things and you see all these tools, and it can be very easily misinterpreted as, oh, if I do these things, then I will gain success. And so I hope that's something we can kind of give back to our communities and listeners to the podcast, is kind of things to avoid getting started in the early days of streaming, or even just relative to data, what's going on in the industry, kind of things, a lot of don'ts, and kind of stuff that we've learned along the way. Again, with that said, being every single person's going to be a little bit different, and it is all about trial and error. Um, but I'm excited. I'm excited to kind of dive in further in the future episodes where we can kind of break down all kinds of stuff, man. Stream setups, schedules, and at the end of the day, you have to find that personal question of why you as an individual person want to make content or want to stream. And I think that question is very important, and it's something that you can't just answer with one single word or one single phrase. I think it's something that has to be more in depth to you, and that question alone is going to be what drives you through kind of the work ethic and the dedication that goes into content creation.
Absolutely. And I'm gonna hang on to the idea of trial and error, and I'm also gonna go back to the idea of us being asked questions in chat. So trial and error, I guess, for somebody that's new, could be coming to a stream, asking one of us, "Hey, I'm looking to stream. Do you have any tips?" And I've been asked that multiple times. I'm sure you've, in one way or another, been asked the same question. And then we're able to kind of give brief, this is how we've done it, or like, oh, what more specifically are you looking to know? Because that's not an easy question. And as we work on this podcast, it's a larger conversation to a much bigger idea that we're not just having with the listeners of the podcast, but our communities on Twitch. And as we continue to grow that conversation, we're also going to be looking for questions, but we're going to be taking into consider ones that we've already heard. And then just again, going back to, oh, hey, I'm thinking about streaming. Or maybe even, let's say, when we played Fallout, I'm sure people have been like, hey, I've thought about streaming this game, XYZ. So then I'm sure both of us right away are going to be encouraging, but also very upfront. It's not for
Very
everybody.
realistic.
Yes,
Now, definitely realistic in painting the right picture of what content creation means in modern day, because it definitely means something now than it did 5 years ago, for example.
absolutely.
Right.
And nowadays, the trend of, let's say, digesting content or creating content from home or from playing a video game or just creating content in general is being, the numbers are up, let's just say. It's definitely, for one reason or another, going to be, I think, the future of a lot of content. I'm not going to say it's going to replace TV per se, but I know people that say it does. For them, it's like, yeah, I join a bunch of streams. I don't, let's say, watch too many shows, or I might just watch Netflix and Twitch, or like. So it's one of those things where, for
Right.
various reasons, it's where people are going, whether they want to create the content or, let's say, digest the content. Whether it's, again, going back to YouTube content more so than just streaming, somebody might be like, oh, I have 5 minutes, I want to watch a quick video, or hey, I want to catch a recent VOD of a recent stream that I missed. It's it's growing. So a lot of these questions, I think, are also evolving. So I think throughout this podcast, it's going to be refreshing to see so many episodes down the line if we revisit certain things because of things in the industry that might change. I mean, if we're talking about, let's say, specific equipment that we're using, Elgato just came out with a bunch of stuff. Now imagine they come out with even more stuff so many dozen episodes later. We might have to revisit that, and then that's going to be another expanded conversation. And now I'm just kind of going back to the idea of trial and error. Um, a lot of what we're talking about now works for us, can work for others, and might not work for everybody. Now, again, with the whole trial and error, testing a lot of stuff, I would say I haven't always streamed the same way. I originally, let's say, started out on a console and then eventually went to different platforms, and now I'm on Twitch and creating content on YouTube. Um, so I would say, in terms of like trial and error, I guess, what are your thoughts for like a growing future on the platforms, and I guess where the industry might be taking us.
So kind of to follow back with what you said of how I think it makes streaming so unique in that sense, because it's how people can consume content, and with live content it is different. So like you have your TV shows, or you have your just like you said about YouTube, you can go to YouTube, you can watch a quick video, or you have YouTubers that you follow, and anytime they release a new video, you're like, oh, let me check out this video. One thing, either one, you like the content of what they make of whatever the topic they're talking about, or two, you even like the person making the content. So when you follow YouTubers for the person, for the actual YouTuber, and you'll kind of watch whatever they're doing. That's really similar to how streaming works, in my opinion. So when people see you playing a game, or someone's really excited about a game, and they're like, "Oh, I want to make content with this, or I want to stream this." Well, the content of whatever game you're actually doing, in my opinion, is more of like kind of the hook to just get you into a category, and then that's literally all it does for you. You can start building your communities around games that you already have an interest in, that you're passionate about, but to have the community based around you as a streamer, and not just the content, not just the game that you play, that's
Mm,
where your personality and that's where your connection to your community has to bleed through. And that's what, in my opinion, makes streaming so unique to so many different forms of different content, because you can have that connection and you have the freedom in that sense. If you build from day one the community of that mindset of, hey, I want the community based around what we're doing, what I believe in, my goals, my passions, my enthusiasm with certain games and what's going on in the game industry, that opens up a way more opportunities for you later on. So I think like having that mindset from day one when you first get into it, I think will go a super long way. Um, Having the experience we both have, going very similar stories with different platforms, trying out different things, the trial and error thing, that is so hand in hand with the content that you make. Because if you want to try something else, you're not going to know how it does. You're not going to know what kind of fits your mold, or what kind of content works best for you, unless you go out there and try it. um, Another episode that I'm sure we're going to talk about is failure. Failure is huge. Failure is very important. It's something you can't be afraid of. It's one of those things that you got to go into this thing. And if you fail, use that as motivation, use it as a learning process, because I have failed many, many times. As Scruffy, I'm sure you have failed many, many times. But the way that we see it, I don't think we treat it as failures more than as learning experiences. And that's kind of really the motivation behind this whole podcast, this whole organization of this whole thing, is kind of just sharing experiences of, hey, we got some success, our platform shuts down, we didn't quit streaming. That alone is kind of a big deal. Like, to me, that's a huge testament to, we're in this for a reason. We have our personal purpose to make content, to pursue content creation, and trial and error is still an everyday experience. And it's almost like one of those things that we're encouraging rather than be wary of. Don't be afraid to fail. Don't be scared to try different things, because throughout your entire streaming career or pursue to make content, you're gonna go through these trial and error phases, and as we still do, like, every day. So does that sound about right?
yeah, absolutely. And I want to add the whole idea of, failure and these like brick walls that people might hit. And then if they quit when they hit a brick wall and then just accept that as failure and they're not learning something from it, then they're not doing themselves a service. But when they're going in with the idea of, okay, this isn't going to work, I might hit a brick wall trying this. And, like we both have tested out different things in our streams. It's a giant learning process. And if you go in understanding, okay, I'm gonna run some tests. I'm gonna science things out, see if this works. Okay, it doesn't work. All right, let me try something else. So we'll get into more specific down the road with later episodes. But just the idea going in, even removing yourself what you might think streaming is, kind of going back, and we'll get into this in the next episode of like why do you want to stream? It's a good thing to keep in the back of your mind because even that might change over time. Um, And just going back to also not necessarily quitting, we mentioned this in the last episode, a lot of people didn't make it or didn't want to go through the speed bump of going from, let's say, Mixer to Twitch. And again, that was around the time where I was trying to also emphasize that a lot of people looked at it as starting over, but it wasn't. It was us starting with, might not be a running start, but it's a walking start. You've done this before. You can do it again. If you're able to have community to come through and help you and push, then obviously that's going to help you. But not everybody went in with the same mentality. And then it's one of those things where you have
100%.
to keep drive, keep purpose in the back of your mind as well. Whereas if you look at failure as opportunity, and I think a lot of our podcast is going to cover that as we also focus on the don'ts, because it's easy. We can come up with a bunch of list of don'ts to do, I guess, per episode, but there's a lot more to it. And it's not a simple answer. And to tell
No,
somebody,
no,
oh yeah,
100%.
failure's a thing, and it's like, wait, what? It's like, yeah, to succeed you need to fail
No, yeah,
plenty of
it's
times first.
exactly, and there's a deeper meaning to that 100%. Yeah. And so I don't want people to listen to this episode either and just instantly get discouraged like, oh no, this sounds
Oh no,
horrible.
not at all.
Like why would I ever want to make content if this is what it is, or why would I ever want to be a streamer if this is what goes with it? I think we're just setting the real expectation. This is what I mean by the statement. Any single person has the ability to stream. You can go out, buy what you need to, turn on a stream, boom, you physically done the acts to stream. You may be streaming to 0 people forever. Um, and some people are dudes, it's all about your personal purpose, man. I know people that turn on a stream and they just do it, turn on a stream. They literally don't care. And you
Hmm.
can, that is nothing wrong with that at all. There's nothing wrong with that at all. It's going to be different for the individual. And that's where that question of, well, why do you personally want to make content, and how do I make content? And that's why that statement is so just interesting to me. Again, anyone can go out, turn on stream. It's with the realization of what we are representing and presenting into these podcasts that kind of goes with it. Now, if you're someone that listens to the podcast, gets something out of it, and is like, yo, I'm kind of ready for this journey and I'm ready to start this trial and error, uh, stepping stone process of kind of knowing, filling out streaming, filling out content creation, and finding out where I fit in all this, then that's a really exciting time. And so we want to spend that as a positive thing, not so much of a negative thing, if that makes sense. So we definitely want to have that motivation and hopefully have that bleed through the podcast of that we are still motivated. We're super excited to get this podcast going. We're super excited with the streams and future events that me personally and Scruffy have planned. And so I think we're going in the right direction with this first year. Obviously, kind of following up with the last episode, we've been on Twitch for this past year, and everything that we've done before that. I agree. It wasn't starting over. We have a foundation of a learning process of all the time we spent on other platforms and how to kind of push that to Twitch and on our channels now currently, and even bleeding that into YouTube content and whatever content we're making today. It's all based on stuff we've learned from the past. So if we're able to kind of not cut corners necessarily, but try to help you along that way, so you can avoid doing some just very simple things that we personally have experienced that hasn't worked for us. And that doesn't mean that you guys can't go out, try to make content a certain way, or do something that hasn't worked for us. We honestly encourage it. It's just sharing our personal experience and hopefully making that relatable.
Absolutely. And these are the resources that we're providing in terms of it's an expanded conversation. So even if it's something like comments left in our stream, comments left on YouTube, however else people can reach us, that's going to also shape the conversation down the road. And this is something that even if back when we started streaming, I personally would have appreciated someone to go to that might have been able to point me in the right direction. Not necessarily tell me how to do something, but to be a part of a conversation. And then, I mean, imagine going to YouTube and typing how to stream. If anybody gives you a 10-minute video, sure, it might have millions of clicks, but that video probably might not be telling you a whole lot. And then somebody might just go in blind and then be blindsided with things they don't expect. And then again, failure, um, speed bumps, and just I don't know. It's a lot. It's a large conversation, and it's not just how to stream, but how to make content. And then for us being streamers who also are producing YouTube content, my YouTube content is starting to evolve more because it used to be mostly just highlights from stream, and then a couple other things that I had time to do with Fallout, and then highlight that. But it's also, for example, for me, gotten to the point where I'm making specifically YouTube original content. And then when I'm on stream with people, I'm like, oh, well, here's a spoiler. This is what happened in the video. Check it out if you want to see more. So for like me, even that's an evolving process up to this day. So like I'm still learning how to make my own content through YouTube and different things that I'm going to, again, highlight from stream, highlight things that are going on, checking out a bunch of different games that are coming up soon. Um, I can imagine my process evolving even further. So I think that's also going to be something that we'll touch base on for a lot of episodes, just evolution of streaming and knowing that tomorrow might be a little different depending on things that you're checking out, how you're producing your content, how you maybe become more efficient in producing certain content and change things a little bit. Um, yeah, I think just going back to for like the drive that like we were mentioning before, a lot of this
Yeah.
has to also be kept in the lens of, I would say for our podcast, our perspective. And again, as we can say the don'ts, and we can sit here and tell our perspectives, it's one of those things where people have to also, again, reflect inward and try to figure out, are you trying to make live content? Are you trying to make content that people check out at a later time? I mean, yes, you can stream on YouTube. For me personally, I'm going to be on Twitch for this foreseeable future and then producing my, let's say, offline content on YouTube. So even that can mean something to somebody else. But understanding
Right.
that this is opening the conversation, I would say, is very important for people to kind of dwell on. If that makes sense. If
Yeah,
they're
no,
going in
definitely.
head first.
Yeah, and I think this being technically episode 1, I think it's perfect. You kind of set the expectation and kind of just put out the realization of the work that is put into content creation. But bottom line is, yeah, I mean, it does require work, man. You know, there is work that I'm sure you put the hours that you put into content creation is just crazy compared to pretty much anything you've done. I assume in your life. For me, it definitely is. But at the end of the day, it is different. So it is a personal goal. It is a personal experience with content creation. It has to be. It's all full circle back to the purpose of why you want to do this, and that drive that you were talking about. Well, that drive is going to help you get through these hours of doing some tedious stuff. Content creation is a ton of fun. You know, I absolutely love what we do. Diving into the new stuff to me, the uncharted waters for me is just like you was kind of talking about the YouTube content. With this last 6 months has really been my first 6 months trying to make some original content on YouTube, and it has been. There's a lot more work that goes into it than I personally realized. And so for me, that's been kind of my personal trial and error, my learning curve. Is just try to figure out, well, how can I transfer some of the content that I make from Twitch, and I'm really so used and really comfortable in that element of streaming to make original content on YouTube. Um, and so I think that's going to be cool. That's something cool that we can kind of relate to in the podcast and talking about episodes of trial and error of what I'm personally going through over the last 6 months, and kind of make it all relative to our streaming ventures as well. But I'm really excited. I think this is a good first episode of keeping expectations where they need to be, but still in a very exciting time. If you guys are listeners that are interested in getting into streaming, or you are new, and kind of like Scruffy was saying, you can literally go to YouTube, type in how to stream. You're going to see 1,000 different videos. Almost all of them will say the same things, and I challenge you. You know, like I encourage it. Go check out 3 or 4 videos, and they're going to touch on a lot of topics, but it's very shallow. And with this podcast, I think we are going to bring up some of these topics that you'll see people talk about, but we'll be able to add the depth and make it very relatable to the listener. And I'm really excited about that.
Oh, absolutely. I would say that that's probably a good point to end it on. Setting expectations slash understanding that how to stream or how to make content is not necessarily a clean cut answer, and it can vary for a lot of different people. I would hope everybody takes something from this, even if you can apply this to just, again, looking at failure as an opportunity. It doesn't have to be just streaming, it could be something in life, trying something new out. You might have to do something bad a few times before you actually start to get the hang of it. I mean, creating content can also be looked at the same way, and I highly encourage it.
All right, so solid wrap up to episode 1. I think that was pretty solid to kind of set the expectations. What do you got going on this week in content creation?
This week, I'm looking at the normal 76 grind, but something that's been a little refreshing is Back for Blood. The beta just kicked off. I know you've been checking that out. I plan on checking that out a little bit more before the open beta is up. I'm gonna say real quick that for somebody who felt like they had a Left 4 Dead sized hole, hole in my heart, I might have something to kind of fill that hole. It's been a while since I've played something like that. Even Earthfall, which was with aliens, was very similar to like a Left 4
Oh
Dead
yeah.
clone, but
Oh yeah, I
not,
remember Earthfall.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely not impressing me as much as this beta has. So I'm really excited. I didn't get through everything. We still had like two more, let's say, missions to finish in the act. But what I did play, I was very interested in. And then that's going to turn into me checking out harder difficulties. But yeah, it's the normal 76 grind. I'm going to be uploading highlights from last month soon. So recapping all the fun that we had last month. It's that like transition phase between last month and this one.
What's your schedule looking like this week?
So throughout the week, Mondays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays are my main stream days. Throughout the week, 7 to 11 Eastern is roughly when you can catch me. Saturdays, we like to do our longer streams. If I can't stream for some reason or the other, I'll stream on Sunday, but we like to get our 10, 12-hour streams, and I like to play a lot of different games, so I need that time to jump into like 6 different games.
No, awesome. Yeah, yeah, for sure. And where can people watch you? Where are you at?
Scruffy23 on Twitch, and if you're trying to catch some of my highlights and other original YouTube content, you can find me as well as Scruffy23 on YouTube.
Hell yeah, hell yeah. For me, very very similar. Obviously, we got to test out some Back for Blood last night, and I really enjoyed it. So I'm going to continue playing it this weekend. Last weekend, I was invited to the Halo Infinite flight, so I spent several hours, very much out of my stream schedule, putting into the flight and testing stuff out. So I will be uploading a video to my personal YouTube here shortly, just kind of recapping some of the content that we were able to see from the Halo flight. As far as this week goes, pretty normal schedule. I do stream Monday through Saturday, 7 p.m. Central. We do a lot of 76 content, a lot of Fallout content. We are going to be kind of going back and forth. We're going to keep enjoying this beta for Back for Blood in the meantime, and trying to change things up a little bit. We were talking about trial and error a little bit on this episode. I'm definitely trying to get back to doing a little bit more variety for the second game to each stream, but it's going to be exciting. So I'm looking forward to this week. And I'm also looking forward to next episode.
Yep, I think the next episode is also going to set a good expectation for conversations and having listeners kind of reflect and see what a lot of these mean, as opposed to it just being like, okay, do this, this, and that. Well, the next episode, we're going to definitely make people reflect a little inward. But I definitely look forward to episode 2. Hope listeners have
Yes.
enjoyed episode 1. Yeah, and this has been the Content Survival Guide podcast.
Thank you guys.